Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop for the day. My name is Michelle Suazo. For those who don't know me, I am the marketing specialist here at Suazo Business Center, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you to our workshop. Today, we have an amazing speaker. She has over 20 years of experience in the human resources field, and she's also the CEO and founder of her own company, Expedition HR, Jill Shroyer. Jill will talk about her business, provide us important information about how you as a small business owner can learn about HR policy and how to prevent sticky situations in your small business. Before we get started, please feel free to make comments and ask questions in our comment section. And to those who are tuning in after the broadcast has ended, please feel free to also leave your comments and your questions, and we will make sure to forward those to our speaker, Jill. So now, without further ado, let's welcome Jill. Hello, Jill.
Hello, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Well, excited to dive in.
Oh, so let's get started. You are you a small business owner, and tell us, how was that you decided to open your business in HR?
Great. Well, it's funny because I never really saw myself throughout the years where I worked for corporations, working for myself, being an entrepreneur, owning a small business, until one day that kind of switched because I saw that what I did was just so helpful to the business I was in that I thought, gosh, I get asked this by people that I work with. I wonder if this would be helpful to many businesses. And that got me kind of thinking, well, maybe I could have my own HR consultancy and really help people with what I call sticky situations, those situations no one else likes that I tended to really lean into. And it just kind of took off from there and was really sticky, as I call it.
Oh, okay. That's so inspiring. Tell me more. Did you encounter any difficulties when you were opening your business?
Yes, I mentioned I never really had an interest, so I didn't go to college for a business degree. I went to college for Spanish and tourism, and so didn't really have any background in how to start a business, how to market myself. So while I was really excited about my knowledge and bringing that to the business, I had no experience with marketing and sales and really building out signature offers and products. So that's been a learning curve for the last few years since I've been in business. And I've loved every minute. It's been hard and challenging and overwhelming and fun, kind of everything bundled in.
Oh, that's amazing. As a small business owner, managing your business, just thinking about anything, like you're just focused on your product. You don't even think about HR. So it can be very complex. Can you tell us more about how a small business owner can understand about HR, their policies, and what kind of resources are out there?
Sure. So I always say Google has some great resources, but supplement Google with kind of expert advice, saying it has to be me, but find someone who you can go to ask kind of those more in-depth questions. And like I mentioned, Google's a great resource. Look for kind of certified pages, government pages that list the details of certain laws in your state, here in Utah, or whatever state you operate in. But today I'd love to help present some kind of ways I consider them fairly easy ways that attendees can go ahead and start preventing sticky situations in their business. Now, all 7 might not apply to every business, but these are really ways that from 1 employee up until 100 employees you could benefit from if you didn't already know some of these kind of tips and techniques for preventing those sticky situations.
Awesome. Before we get started, look, we already have some comments here from Charlotte Purvis. She's from North Carolina. Here is as Jill's guest. All the best to all of you at the Suazo Business Center. Welcome, Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte. Nice to have you here.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, perfect. If you want to go ahead to the next slide, Michelle, thank you so much. So I just have a short disclaimer. Us HR people and lawyers, I'm not a lawyer, don't claim to be one, but we need to put this in. Just any advice I give here isn't a consultant relationship. So I'm sure everyone's kind of seen that at the beginning of presentations, but we can go on to the next slide here. So I like to talk a little bit about my style in presentations before we dive too much in. If you want to go ahead and roll out those bullet points for me, Michelle, thank you so much. So my style is simple. I like to explain things, hopefully in a simple way. I operate my business in a very simple way. I like to really focus on what I'm especially good at and serving clients. And so I like to present in the same way. And I noted nuggets. I like to send you off with some really tangible things that you can put into place in your business. And I love having fun in my personal life, in my work. So I'm going to try and incorporate some fun into the presentation as well, because we all know HR doesn't always go along with the word fun. So what do we even do here at Expedition HR? I'll kind of summarize that for you here. I teach HR fundamentals, so small business owners can prevent sticky situations and essentially get time back to work on the business, on running their business and growing their business. So I love to teach and educate. And so we'll go ahead to the next slide. And so this is kind of what we do here. We really focus on the HR basics, because knowing the basics will prevent sticky situations from happening in your business. And so how do we do this? So here at Expedition HR, we serve our clients in many ways. And initially, when I started the business, I thought, well, gosh, I want to help everyone with everything. I have so many HR. And the way we do this education, it's called subscription. And what I'm going to talk about today is all in there. But that's really the way we educate and teach small businesses about these tools. And along with that subscription is one-on-one HR support with me. So that's our main education offering that will prevent sticky situations from happening. And so we can go ahead and so what I like to say is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we get going so fast. I was talking with someone yesterday about their restaurant business, and they said it's so hard to stop and slow down. We're going so fast. And I love the expression as well. Sometimes you have to slow down a little bit to speed up. So kind of just slowing down and checking a few boxes to make sure that you're not going to find yourself in a sticky situation down the road. And so before we go too far, I'd love to talk about what a sticky situation is, just in case there's any confusion, as I'm referring to that a lot in the presentation. So I ask you, the viewers here, when you sticky situation, what do those words bring up for you? What feelings come up with those words? If you want to pop them in the chat, I'd love to see what people think of when they think of a sticky situation that they have to deal with.
Looks like we're not having any comments yet, but once we do, I'll make sure to let you know.
Okay, perfect. Well, the reason why I mentioned I like to always start with talking about what this is because they're not fun. Sticky situations prevent them. So they cause headaches, they can cause loss of sleep, they can cause stress, anxiety, and sometimes even dread. And they waste time. And so that's why I always talk about the why. I don't ever like to say you should do this in your business and not share why. So we want to avoid sticky situations because the bottom line is they cause us stress and waste time that we could be using to put back into our business. So I will show you go ahead and hopefully prevent sticky situations. And I just see a comment come through. Difficult relationships. Yes.
Yes. And here we have another one from our executive director, Sylvia. When something goes wrong and you don't know what to do.
Yes, absolutely. And they're just not fun. That's what it boils down to. I say these words and I've had people say, oh, you just made me kind of cringe. And so we're going to teach you some ways today that can hopefully help you prevent these sticky situations. So we can advance forward so you don't look like the girl in the picture. Instead, you're happy and motivated.
Here we have another one, actually.
Performance that doesn't meet expectations. Exactly. Absolutely. That's a really common one. And we're actually going to talk about, we've got some more coming in.
Okay, here we have another one. A sticky situation can be not holding all employees to the same standard and picking favorites. That's a really good one.
Oh, I
Great
love
one.
all these comments. Thank you so much.
Thank
We're
you,
going to
Angel.
actually talk about these. What's that, Michelle?
Oh, thank you, Angel. You're providing a really great point.
So today I'm going to share 7 ways businesses find themselves in sticky situations, 7 ways businesses can prevent sticky situations, and then I'll kind of do a quick recap at the end so you have some tangible takeaways. So let's just talk really quick about those 7 ways that small businesses can find themselves in a sticky situation. I'm just going to kind of list them off and be thinking in your head, oh, yes, I think I could use some education on that topic, or this has come up for me before. So confusion with 1099 contractor versus W-2 employee status. That is such a common question I get. Inaccurate or non-existent job descriptions. No Form I-9 on file for each employee. Ineffective or maybe even risky interview questions. And we're going to have a little fun with this one. Not having an employee handbook. Not really understanding what documentation is. And lack of consistency. Angel's comment was exactly to that point of consistency. So we'll dive into these and hopefully share some information that will shed some light on these for you. So 1099 versus W-2 status. So to recap, when someone is a 1099 status, that's sometimes referred to as an IC or an independent contractor, a contractor. The other status is called a W-2, and that means because you issue them a W-2 at the end of the year. And these I like to refer to as employees. They're on your company's payroll. They are not contractors. A lot of people think of them as like not temporary. And you want to be really careful with the differentiation on these. When I first meet with a client, we always talk about how many employees they have. And I am sure to give a little bit of education on the differences because they'll often say, I have 6 employees. And I say, that's great. And then they start talking and I question, are they W-2 employees on your payroll or are they contractors who you pay through your accounts payable? And I usually get a pause on the other end of the line saying, I'm not sure. I think they're employees. And so what I highly recommend doing is taking a bit of pause when you hire someone and looking at the factors that they're an independent contractor or an employee. Some of the things you'd want to look at are like the level of training you're going to give them. If you're going to be interacting with them frequently, telling them how to, that lends itself to actual payroll employee status. I mentioned amount of oversight. If they're going to be working with you indefinitely in part-time or full-time basis, when I say indefinitely, there's really no set end date. That lends itself to thinking this is a W-2 employee. And also the work location and schedule. So if you're telling them you need to be here from these hours and this is the work you're going to, then lends itself to an employee relationship. And why this is so important is because if you're marking people as contractors, you risk being audited by the IRS and questioned because they can look at it as you're avoiding payroll taxes and potentially avoiding offering benefits if you have 50 plus employees. So I'll pause there. I see a question.
Yes, here we have a question from Andrea. She's actually talking about this. I didn't know that a 1099 person is not an employee. I thought if I'm paying for someone's work, then aren't they my employee?
That's a great asking that. So you can really call them internally whatever you'd like. How they're classified is the most important part. So I like to differentiate it. And even internally, I like to call 1099 independent contractors as such and employees. So for example, Andrea, if you had 6 employees, 2 were contractors and 4 were paid on your payroll, you could say you have 2 contractors and 4 employees. That way, there's really no confusion to them or internally what role they play, so that you're not calling a contractor an employee and have them confused about their status as well. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Jill.
Sure. And there's one more bullet point on here, and this goes back to just assessing this when you know you have a need. So I have a free resource that, oh, absolutely, anytime, Andrea. If anyone would like a resource that recaps all these things we're talking about, I'd be happy to provide that to you after. Because really, you know, just listening and kind of soaking it in during the presentation will probably benefit you the most. And then everything is recapped in this resource, which I'd love to offer to everyone attending today. So we'll go on to the next one in the list. And think of your questions too. I'm going to really try and end early so that we have a little time for questions that come up kind of later in the presentation as well. But feel free to ask them as we go through the information. So a Form I-9, this is probably the most boring of the 7 ways, but it's so important. So this Form I-9 is the right to work document. And I put this on here. I'm surprised how many small businesses I talk to when we start ticking through kind of the initial pieces and I get a feel for where they are in business. They talk about their employees who they pay on payroll, and we talk about the Form I-9s and making sure they're all on file. And I get that pause on the other end of the line saying, I don't know what this Form I-9 is. So we talked about contractors versus employees. Every employee needs a Form I-9 on file for your business. If you have one employee paid on payroll, they need the Form I-9. It's commonly called the right to work document. And this document you have to hold as long as they're employed by you. And then after they leave, there's certain retention guidelines, which I'm not going to get too much into here, but it's a really important form that you go through with them, show them all the documentation that they can provide, and let them go ahead and pick what applies to them. Be very careful saying you need to bring an unexpired passport, or you need to bring an unexpired driver's license and social security card. So many people, even in HR, think it's okay to say that. And I always bring that up because you want to say you can bring anything from these lists, which appear, if you pull the I-9 in this free resource, there's a link to the I-9. And in that shows all the documents they can bring. And there's numerous documents that they can show. So we never want to push them to bring a certain document because they might not have a certain document, but they might have another one. So really important, the Form I-9 is the one absolutely required form you need if you have W-2 payroll employees. So we'll move on to point number 3, job descriptions. This is kind of another one I might get some cringes thinking, oh, all this HR talk, but job descriptions can be such an amazing tool for you in your business. What they do is outline what the job is. And there's these things called essential duties. Anyone out there heard of essential duties? Definitely an HR term, but an important one. Essential duties are what that person, the incumbent in the role, is going to be doing on a daily basis most of the time. I say like 90% of the time, what will they be doing? You list that on a job description. You list things such as, what are the qualifications for this role? You know, for example, you need to have worked in customer service in maybe a certain industry before you could come work for us. And you outline all of that so your interviews are super easy because you have a guide and you know how to craft your questions based on this job description. And it's also easier to measure performance once you bring someone on and you have a job description. And a job description is great for contractors too, because you just outline what you need of them. So when you're maybe looking for a 1099 contractor, you can also use this internal resource to kind of tick through the items which you'll need them to do. So it's just a great resource all around. And with your employees, when you're measuring their performance, you'll have this to pull up to say, okay, let's talk through this. It looks like you're missing the mark on a couple of these essential duties. I'd like to talk about a plan for improving that. So a really valuable tool, not required, but a very valuable tool. And there's a link in this subscription I mentioned. There's a link to not only a job description, there's instructions, a video tutorial on exactly how to complete it. So you could get it in place with your business as soon as today. And if you have 15 or more employees, there's out there, you've probably heard of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So there are some requirements for making reasonable accommodations to those essential duties. So if you have more than 15 employees, highly, highly recommend you get your job descriptions in place.
And also, we have more comments, but Jill was mentioning that she has her presentation in her freebie, which it's in the comment description. Please make sure you check that out.
Excellent. I see a question.
Yes, here we are. Jennifer Morales. Hi. While you're talking about job description with our new reality, COVID, right? Can an employer have a COVID-19 vaccine mandate as a condition for employment?
Jennifer, I love this question. Thank you so much for asking it. Everyone's probably thinking it. So I'm just going to take a quick step back before I answer it. So when COVID was first kind of showing itself and nobody quite knew what to do, and then the vaccine was in the works, and then companies were starting to talk about, can we mandate it? And back then, and I'm not a lawyer, don't claim to be one, but the legal guidance was saying, be very careful. It's new, it's technically not FDA approved. And so there was a lot of hesitation with even talking about requiring a vaccine and being too forceful. Now that there's the variant, things have shifted. And when the vaccines, as they tick through getting their FDA approval, this is actually a very relevant topic, and I'm getting asked this a lot. So I love, Jennifer, again, that you brought it up, because the short answer is yes. You can absolutely mandate that your employees get the vaccine, and you have a lot more kind of clout with requiring this. And I do always recommend, though, seek out either legal advice or HR consulting to make sure that your policy is written in such a way that it does kind of capture everything that a vaccine mandate would need. And it's a little bit more of a conversation than we can have here. But short answer is yes, it's becoming a lot more commonplace to not only require vaccines, but to say, if you don't want to get vaccinated, we are going to let you go, and that's your basis. But don't roll anything out until you have a policy and give it some thought as to what you want in there. Like, for instance, a time frame. What if somebody can't get the vaccine because of a disability? You've got to factor in these few things before you roll it out. So it needs to be a thoughtful rollout, but you can. Great question. So this is my favorite part of the whole presentation, and this is interview questions, because it's really neat, because managers within companies can benefit from this, as far as even if they're not business owners, they're interviewing people. So if you have teams and you have managers and they're interviewing people, you can share this with them as well. So it's not only business owner knowledge. So I just say, be careful what you ask. Let me give you an example. If you meet someone for an interview and they just have a lovely accent and you say, oh, I love your accent, where are you from? That can be potentially risky, because it can make them feel like they have to say maybe where they were born or where they grew up. And you've immediately put them in kind of an awkward spot. And you also learned information that you don't need. You're talking about the job. You don't want to gather personal information. I'll give you another one. If you want to ice break an interview, you can say, tell me about yourself professionally. A lot of people say, so tell me about yourself. And if you leave it at that, you tend to get people saying, well, I'm married, I have 3 kids, I have 2 dogs, and well, you know, this is my second marriage, and you're going to hear their whole life story. So add that word professionally on the end, and you keep your questions focused on the job. We talked a little bit about job descriptions. So if you have your essential duties outlined, guess what? When you go to create your questions, you can look at each essential duty and craft a question based on those. And I guarantee, if you take those steps, you're going to hire someone with the qualifications and skills you need for the role, because you kept it really targeted. And I also recommend keeping most of your questions to behavioral type. What that means is, tell me about a time when you experienced this, or tell me about a time when you did this at a past employer. And it makes them elaborate on the line item in their resume. You can ask yes/no questions, and there are some that you need to ask, but try and focus on behavioral questions. And I'll give you an example, one last example under interview questions. If someone, you're thinking, gosh, I don't really want someone leaving at 3 o'clock to pick up their kids, but I know I can't ask if they have kids. And, I want them to work on Sundays. How do I ask that? A way you could consider asking that is, are you able to work a Sunday through Thursday schedule, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.? And if they answer yes, you note it down. You can even ask the question a couple different ways if you're really concerned about getting someone that can work the schedule. But you never want to say, do you have kids you need to leave early to pick up? Is there anything that would keep you from working, until 5 every day? Don't lead them. Just those are the yes/no questions that are okay to ask. And you may be thinking, okay, well, if I ask this, and then down the road, they tell me they can't work Sundays, or, oh, I have to leave at 3 for an hour every day. You can actually refer back to the interview and say, gosh, you mentioned you could do this, and I even asked you a couple times. We're going to have to talk about moving forward, kind of how we're going to do this, because this is what I need for the role. So hoping that makes sense, adding a little bit of clarification on what I mean by being careful about your questions. So I'll pause a minute. I think I see a couple questions.
Yes. No, and those are really great points, Joe. I feel like even nowadays, it's really hard to even get employees to, apply. It's been a really hard situation with the hiring process. And look here, we have a really great comment from Lidio. It's very hard to find qualified employees. What can I do to keep them in addition to competitive wages?
Yes, so it's a little bit out of the scope of the presentation, but I can definitely share a couple ways. So creating a space, we're going to talk about this at the end, but I'd like to jump to it a little bit. Like you say, once you've done all the work to get a qualified employee in, competitive wages are a factor, but research shows that actually it's not as much of a factor. And they say above a certain amount, money is not the issue. When you're talking lower hourly pay, each dollar is very telling in how long that person's going to stay with you. So things you can do is, appreciate them, put recognition efforts in place. I have a whole section in the subscription on recognition, and it talks about ways you can do it for free, for like $5 a person a month, or higher cost ways, maybe your management employees, talking to them a little bit more about maybe an experience you could get for them. Competitive wages are a piece, definitely, but making them feel valued and motivated to do the work, feeling safe, giving them autonomy over what they're doing, offering them to have continuing education in a field that interests them. There's so many ways that you can do it additionally to just compensation.
Thank you. And we have another comment here from Edward. He's actually our operations manager here. And he just talking, I just heard this morning, Delta Airlines is going to start finding their employees $200 a month if they are insured through the company and not vaccinated.
Yep. It's a really interesting, going back to how things have changed, especially with the variant. Like companies like Delta are taking a stand, and everyone has their own views on it. I'm usually not afraid to share my view. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I am quite excited that companies like Delta are taking stands like this, because I think this is not an average situation.
Exactly.
This is a global healthcare crisis. So.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm going to have a little fun with this one. Those of you that are out there, I would love it if you would let me know. So I wanted to just kind of hit home the idea of interview questions and really being careful, because some are pretty obvious. Even the one I mentioned, like, that's a lovely accent. Where are you from? People might have thought, oh yeah, I would never ask that. But some would have said, ooh, that gave me pause. And I'll be honest, before I had a lot of training and was hiring people, I probably had asked that. at some point early on in my career as a manager. And so it happens. So I have a question for the group, and I would love to hear your feedback. If you can ask these questions. So the answer is yes or no. So I'm going to ask you the first question. Can you ask a candidate, is Bigfoot real? What do you think?
Let's see. Personally, I don't. Can you ask this question?
Don't be shy, everyone. Let's see. Michelle, we're going to put you on the spot.
I mean, that can be considered like just like a conversational topic, no? When you're like in the interview process. So I feel like you can, right? Okay, so here we have actually a comment. Barbara is telling us no.
All right. We've got a no and a yes. All right. We're getting heated here.
And this Claudia is saying yes. So what's the right answer?
Okay. So it's a bit of a trick question. Icebreaker.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, an icebreaker, right?
So this is a yes, but. And the reason I say yes, but there's nothing illegal about asking, is Bigfoot real? But I challenge, people who would ask this is, what's the point? What are you trying to get at? Are you looking at kind of seeing their views on things, or it's kind of meaningless, but it's not illegal. It's just what I say, we're all about being efficient. And while we want to make relationships with people that we're looking at to interview, or we're interviewing, and we want to make them feel like they want to work with us, a question like that might not be the most efficient use of our time. So, perfect. Okay. So let me add a little bit onto that. So there's also these questions, I call them analytical questions. You may have been asked one, or you may have heard of them, such as, how many golf balls can you fit on an airplane? Those are a little more of a question where you may want to ask if in the right environment, they may be appropriate. And what they are is looking for analytical skills. So I say, if you're going to ask kind of these different questions, like this one, how many golf balls can you fit on an airplane? You would want them to maybe answer like, oh, are they in boxes, or are they loose? Are they going to be up with the pilot or not? Are they going to be in the cargo area? You might want to learn some analytical. If they just say, I have no idea, that may not be the person for a job that requires high analytical skills. So hopefully that's kind of making sense. But, what kind of flower are you? If you were a superhero, which would you be? Again, if there's a purpose that you feel would benefit you getting the most qualified candidate, then by all means ask it. I say to just be careful, because your time is valuable. So that was kind of a little fun exercise there.
It was. It got us thinking.
Yes. So I'm just curious too, in the comments, is there anything here that stood out to you as, oh, that was really, really something that hit home for me? And I think, and it's okay, because it's a little bit maybe personal to your business, but even if you say a yes, no, or is there anything so far that you felt beneficial? And we can keep moving on, but I'd love to just have feedback if what I've shared so far it has been beneficial.
And also, right now that we're having such a little break, remember that you can also have a meeting with Jill. She has a subscription, and she can talk more about your specific business. That's in the comment sections. Check it out. Look into her pricing, and just getting more understanding of how you can handle all these kind of sticky situations more specifically to your business.
And the beautiful thing about the subscription is that it's month to month. So you can come on it, come off it, come back on it, or there's fairly deep discounts if you go on it annually. And the beauty of it is there's resources that you can access 24/7 on your own time, but you have full access to me for questions, because let's be honest, you can have all the resources, but everyone's going to have questions that relate to their business. Exactly. So I just love getting to know kind of each business individually.
Here we have, okay, so yes, basically we're going to display this. Here's the link for the description in the comment section for those subscriptions. So check them out, look into each subscription and see what's more beneficial for your business.
And I haven't linked it here, Michelle, but if someone's thinking that's great, I'm not sure, I would love to chat with you if you think it may be something that interests you, and we can even talk about getting you on for a free month and checking it out and having access to HR support and seeing if it works for you, because I get it. Small businesses, we have to look at each expenditure carefully. So if you think, ooh, that might be interesting, and there's no strings attached, if you wanted to look at it, I love just kind of sharing a free month so you can look at it firsthand.
Okay. If we have anyone, we will make sure to post that in the comment section as well, so they can check it out. And also, I did see that you recently were talking about books on your LinkedIn. We're adding here a link to your Conquer Sticky Situations book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Excellent. Yes, thank you. So throughout the years that I worked within HR, I always realized I had a knack for what I call the sticky situations that no one else really wanted to deal with. And so I had an idea a couple years ago that I wanted to write a book on something that I have felt like I've become an expert on in HR. And it developed into my kind of capturing the formula for addressing a sticky situation. So let's say you do everything to prevent it, but it happens, and it will happen. Things are going to happen. You will have performance issues you just need to address. It's the reality of life, right? We prevent. Well, I'm not eliminate. That's why I don't say we eliminate sticky situations. It's just not possible. So in the book, I talk about 5 steps to conquering any sticky situation at work or in life. And what it does is help you use few words to have high impact and a high result in what you expect from the conversation. So I'm so excited to share that. And I'm working on book number 2, which is how to prevent sticky situations. So I'll be recapping a lot of what I share in the subscription and just a lot of tips and tricks and ideas that will be in a book as well.
Okay, and this can be purchased on your website only, or is there anywhere else?
Yeah, so there is a link on my website as well as directly on Amazon.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so please make sure you check that out. It's in the comment section.
And it's on Audible. I've read it. I've read my own audiobook, and that's on Audible. And then there's Kindle as well as paperback.
Oh, so awesome. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah, so we can dive on into the last few here. So next way to prevent sticky situations is to have a handbook, even if it's a basic one. And I really like to stress that because handbooks, another one of those HR terms that everyone says, oh, do I need one? You don't need one. But when you get to a certain size, you are required to post notices and tell your employees about a list of things. So having a handbook early is going to benefit you for that reason. And also, I keep going back to, it's going to save you time because it's going to give a reference point for your employee, your one employee, or maybe your few employees on, if they have time off available, if they're offered any type of benefit, even if it's not insurance. A lot of small businesses, they don't have to offer it, so they don't because it's expensive. But they offer maybe discounts to local retailers or discounts to the business they work for. Maybe how often they're paid. All this can be outlined in the handbook. And so they have a resource. So you as the business owner don't get the tap on the shoulder every day saying, hey, when do we get paid? Hey, do I get any discounts? Hey, how do I take time off? You can outline it there and save time. And you can also outline your company's expectations for dress code, work conduct, work performance, and how you address it as far as you believe in coaching first. And then maybe you'll move to some sort of write-up. There's all types of kind of progressive discipline policies, things that you can put in there depending on your style and in your preference for your unique business. So a really valuable tool, kind of like job descriptions. These can save so much time. So the second to last one here is about documentation. So the point I like to make about documentation is that it doesn't have to be this big ominous thing, because I have clients sometimes that call me and say, I'm so stressed. I've got to let one of my maybe 10 employees go. And I can hear it in their voice. And I say, okay, let's start. And we start ticking through kind of the situation. And I say, do you have any documentation on these things you're sharing with me? And there's that pause again. And they say, no, I should have. I just didn't know what I should write. And they kind of go into this like, oh. So I want to encourage you. And when I say just document everything, I don't mean that to be in a scary way. All I mean is if you have one employee and something goes on, or you have to correct them with what they're doing, you may want to just note it and just say, oh, on August 26th, I told Sheila that she was doing this one way and I actually need her to do it the other way. Because if at a later time, Sheila keeps making the same error, you may have thought it was minor, but if you don't just note it, you will think you'll remember, but you won't. Trust me. And this actually happened, had a small business call me, needed to move someone on. And so we started going back and they had no documentation. So I kind of worked with them and we tried to just grab some dates and instances, all these things I'm listing here on this slide, to kind of build some sort of like story as to where we were going so that I could advise them on if it was a risky termination or if they were okay to proceed. Unemployment claims, they're going to ask you like details of what happened. So these things, these 6 points about when there's ever an incident, just jot these things down, even if it's just in a notebook or if you email yourself, or if it warrants emailing the employee themselves to just say, hey, today we had a chat about you coming in late this last week. Don't foresee this being an issue moving forward. Please make sure you arrive at 9 a.m. Then you have an email. It's time. It has a date and a time. The employee got it. You have a little trail there in case you ever had to go back. Now, I'm not saying we nitpick and document every single thing. What I am saying is you just don't know what you may need to call upon in the future. So having little bits of documentation will be so beneficial to you. And in that resource that I shared where I recap the 7 ways, I actually have a documentation template that I'll offer to you if you'd like it. So even if you don't get the free resource and you say, oh, I just want that template she has, reach out to me. My email is right there and I will send that over to you. I'd be happy to.
And talking about how can we reach out to you? Is there like for your website link, a phone number, an email?
Yeah, so what you listed there in the comments, that's my best phone number, and either info@expeditionhr.com, that's kind of my general inbox, or Jill@expeditionhr.com is great too. And there's contact us links on the website, so you can kind of get it from any direction, but I'm happy to take calls, emails, if you have questions, and we can always, what we'll probably do if you reach out is we'll set up a time that we have carved out, so I dedicate that time to you to chat through kind of your questions and what your needs may be.
Thank you, Jill. And actually, now that we're talking about documentation, we had someone actually from the private messaging tool that we have asked this question. How can I handle harassment complaints appropriately?
Okay, that's kind of a big one. So you would start with documenting what happened. And so pretty much anything, whether it be harassment, whether it be sexual harassment or not, always start with documentation. And not only having it for the record, but as you write it out, you might kind of think of some things as you're going through it, like, ooh, I should probably talk to this person because of what I just noted here. So what exactly was the question again? Sorry, Michelle.
How can I handle harassment complaints appropriately?
Okay, so this is also a bit of a larger topic, and these you want to be very careful with. The bottom line is document and some language that I'll give you that you should use if a person comes to you and says, I feel like I've been harassed here in the workplace. The first thing you want to say to them is, thank you for bringing this to me. This is important. You're not saying who's at fault, that they're at fault, they're not at fault, it will get resolved. You just say, thanks for bringing this to me. This is important. And then you go down kind of the documentation route, make sure you hear from them about what happened. And there's kind of an investigation process you'll need to go through. So I definitely recommend getting kind of expert guidance on, given your unique situation, how to best proceed. And the reason I say that is sometimes you'll want to, so let me step back a little bit. The guidance I give is obviously, it's not legal advice, and it's also priced not at legal advice prices. So I can get you to a place where if I think you need to talk to a lawyer, I would recommend it. Whereas some people go right to an employment lawyer, and that's not the wrong step to do, you're probably going to pay a lot more talking directly to a lawyer than you may starting with an HR consultant who can kind of get the risk in order and then say, okay, if you still want to proceed, this is high risk. For example, if you did an investigation and you felt that I need to let this person go, then you could have at least an assessment on what kind of risk you have in doing so. And I just had an additional thought and it just escaped me. I saw another comment come through. So hopefully that was helpful kind of in a broad sense, but definitely telling them it's important is the key first step, as well as documenting what happened and then taking appropriate next steps.
Okay, thank you. Here,
I know what I was going to say. I'm sorry, Michelle.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
If there was an incident, and hopefully maybe this could help everyone if this ever came up, if there was an incident, whether between employees or contractors and employees, or a vendor of yours and an employee, and there became a risky situation where you felt like someone was either potentially going to get assaulted or something really serious, make sure that you get all parties kind of sent home, either employees, get them to a safe place and tell them, I want you to head home until I can investigate this. Make sure that you make everyone safe first and foremost. Tell them this is important. We need to make you feel safe, whatever the outcome, and then proceed as such. But always safety, always first. You don't want to keep someone in an environment while you're doing your investigation necessarily. Again, depends on the gravity. If you can separate them within the workplace and it's not a physical violence thing, it may be okay while you investigate, but it's very case by case. So I don't want to go too far into that one.
No, that's a really great point. Thank you. And here we have another comment here from Claudia. Youth is an at-will state. Why do I need documentation to fire an employee? Can I just say it didn't work out?
These are the best questions. You're asking great questions out there. Thank you, Claudia. So I get asked this a lot too. So people say, why do we even have this as an at-will state if you're telling me I have to document? So bottom line, it is an at-will state. And so just to recap for everyone, that means your employee can hightail it at any time and not work for you anymore, or you can tell them to take a hike at any time. That's an at-will employer. Now, that said, you have to be a little bit careful, especially if you have 15 or more employees, because we're an at-will state, but you need to be careful about letting go potentially a person in a protected class, which may be someone of a certain age, of a certain national origin, gender, race, etc. So it's kind of like those interview questions. I said, yes, but you just have to be a little bit careful when at will. So under 15 employees, a lot of the employment laws actually don't apply, because think of it, small businesses with a couple employees, if they just let someone go because they weren't working out, they couldn't afford to be sued. It would probably put them out of business. So that's my hunch why they crafted those laws as such, because employees couldn't come back and sue you. So if you want to let someone go, if you only have a few employees, there's a lot less risk with the at-will clause to doing that. If you have more employees, I would highly recommend you take a step back before you let them go just based on at-will alone. But short answer is yes, it's there for a reason, but be a little bit careful.
Wow, that I didn't even know about that information. That was a great question. Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, so we've got the last one, and then we can see if any other questions come up at the end. So last one is consistency. There was a great question earlier on, kind of about a sticky situation and when someone's treated differently. And I loved that question because bottom line, I don't want people to confuse consistency with always having to do the exact same thing for everyone, because that's actually not what it means. It means that if I said reference the handbook, if you have a handbook and you have a policy as to, let's say, tardiness, and to be consistent means that if your policy is 3 or more tardies and you get a written warning, be consistent. Now, there will be case-by-case exceptions, but consistency can fall apart when you make too many exceptions. So be as consistent as possible, while also a part of the book I talk about in Conquer Sticky Situations is about the human factor. Let's be honest, we're all humans, things happen. That said, you want to be as consistent as possible. And if you're fair and consistent in your treatment of your employees, you're going to create an atmosphere of safety, and those people are going to want to stay with you. If you're predictable and consistent, generally speaking, and fair, you will earn trust, respect with your people. And so that's why I can't stress this enough. And that's why I say documentation, because then you have a basis to find out what you did last time. So I'll give you an example. If you are a really small business, you don't have the family medical leave requirements because that's for 50 or more. You might say, well, someone needed to go take a leave to take care of an ill family member. And you thought, of course, I'm going to give 2 weeks to them. Remember that and document it, because next time when someone asks you to take 2 weeks for maybe something else that maybe you think is less important or less serious, and you think, I don't want to give that to them, just look back and say, I don't want to lose my credibility with my team. Let me see if these are similar, because what you do for one, you may want to, you do want to consider doing for another, unless there's a lot of different factors at play. So you don't have to, you always hear as a kid, you don't have to do the same. Fair is not always the same, but fair is generally consistent. And that goes back to having your policies. What do you stand by as a company, and be consistent. If you say, we handle things in this way, and every time you handle it a different way, you're going to lose employees. You're going to have a revolving door, because no one's going to know what to expect. And it's scary when you don't know what to expect from someone who is giving you a paycheck, or, you're working for on a daily basis. So credibility, consistency, and safety is the last key point I wanted to make today. So we'll just pop into recapping the presentation, and then I would love to see if anyone has any last questions. So the first one, that W-2 versus 1099 status, please take a bit of pause and grab the resource and tick through some of those things that are really telltale of a payrolled employee versus a contractor. I don't want you to get fines from the IRS. And I mentioned the level of oversight, the schedule. In a nutshell, if you're overseeing them very closely, what they're doing, when they're doing it, how they're getting from point A to B, that could be an employee. If you tell them, hey, get from A to B, we'll talk to you in a month, that's likely a contractor. And remember, W-2 employees need the Form I-9. I had a client once that came and said, we have a Form I-9 for a contractor. And I said, you don't fill out a Form I-9 for contractors. You don't do the right to work documentation on your contractors. So just kind of got to keep those 2 key points straight. And then spend time outlining your essential duties on the job descriptions. You'll have better interview questions. You'll be more efficient with your time, and you'll get the most qualified candidates. And I can't remember if I have other bullets. Yeah. So question your questions on your interviews. Just kind of think, is this going to potentially have make the candidate uncomfortable by answering something personally? Never ask, are you married? Do you have kids? Do you have a partner? What church do you go to? Do you practice a religion? Those seem hopefully pretty obvious, but never ask those type of questions. Keep it job focused. And you can build relationships while keeping things work focused. And then document. And this is why I give this as a free resource, because I really don't want this one to be missed. I want everyone just to have even a form that has all these areas I mentioned in there, so that it's just, oh, I got to pull out my form and I'm prompted to note all the facts, and then keep those together. And I promise you, someday it will come in very handy.
Let's see, and then consistency.
Yes. And consistency equals safety. And at one point I'd like to make too, retention, you want to keep employees. Well, of course you do, because it wastes time looking for new employees. But did you know, and I'd be curious if anyone out there knows the average cost when you lose one employee, do you know how much it costs on average? And this is on the low end, to replace them. Does anyone have a dollar estimate for me?
Let's see. Do we have any comments?
Let's see who's
Don't
gonna
be shy.
take a leap. And there's no bad answer. This is
Exactly.
just a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So the average, and this is on the low end, $3,000 to $6,000 per employee. And you might be thinking, well, I have a small business. I only have a couple employees. It's not that expensive when I lose someone. It is. And if you really get into the weeds and look at it, it's everything from not only maybe posting a job, paying for those fees, but your loss of productivity in your business. You're not producing as much. You're not serving as many clients. Then when they come on, who's going to train them? If it's you as the business owner, you're losing time maybe promoting your business, marketing your business. That is costing you a lot. Because think of how much you sell products for and how much you're losing when you're training someone. So all these things, especially being consistent, I love it. A couple thousand. Yeah, even more than that. So this is for like a line level position, like an hourly position. As it goes up, it can be upwards of $50,000 per person that leaves once you have kind of a bigger company with kind of executive roles in it, or even someone that's like your right-hand person that you hired. So yeah, so you don't have to answer this, just kind of a thoughtful point. What resonated most with you today? And maybe you can extract 1 to 2 things that you could implement this month to start preventing sticky situations in your business. And then the last slide just recaps. Thank you, Michelle, for posting links. So email me if you forget or can't access the links later. You can always email me, and I invite you to check out the subscription and reach out if it's something you may like to kind of test drive. And of course, I love doing mini HR assessments where you go away with a little bit of value about where you stand in your business when it comes to HR. And we can talk about if maybe the subscription or some other way I can support you. So thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a pleasure to work with the Suazo Center, and I look forward to being in touch with all of you.
No, thank you so much, Jill. This has been such a great presentation. I feel like there's so many information, and like Jill said, please go ahead and check out her subscription, make an appointment with her, look more into your beneficial and specific benefits for your business. The link to her book is in the comment section. Everything is in the comment section. You have in the screen her personal email, how to reach out to her is also for her website. Everything is in the comment section. And also here at the Suazo Business Center, we also have our advising sessions, our advisors. We also have upcoming workshops and classes, so please check those out. I'll be providing our phone number just shortly. You can contact us at 801-521-1709 or sending an email to our front desk at suazocenter.org, or even send us a private message on Facebook. I know that you also have social media, right? Instagram and Facebook. So also feel free to reach out to them through their social media. And thank you once again to everyone for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Claudia. Bye now.